This anecdote is entitled The Whipping of Ghislaine. Ghislaine was Bob's youngest daughter. She was very spoiled. He had given her a pony for her 9th birthday. She posed no threat to him because this was a period when she loved horses before she discovered men. Later on in her life, her father had been profoundly jealous of her many boyfriends. Someone had left the gate of the tennis court open one morning, and her pony had wandered onto the court and left mounds of dung everywhere. It had also eaten its way through the net. I was walking round the garden with Bob. Ghislaine was lying on her back on the grass outside the tennis court, with her legs bent, playing God Save the Queen on a recorder, which is a flute-like instrument. "What's your pony doing on the tennis court?" Bob asked mildly. At first he was quite cross, but when he saw me laughing, his anger subsided. Bob said, "It's not so much the fact that I mind your pony being on the tennis court, but I won't tolerate its leaving its visiting card behind." He then went into the offices of Pergamon Press and left me alone with Ghislaine. We talked for a while. Though very cheeky, there was a natural sweetness and innocence about her. She told me she was due to receive a hiding from her father that afternoon. I managed to bite back the words, "lucky old you." Instead, I asked, "What did you do to annoy him?" She said, "I asked Judy and Jean to do some extra work for me." "Who are Judy and Jean, and what did you ask them to do?" She said, "Oh, they're secretaries. Judy Ennals is a fairly senior secretary of Bob's, and Jean Badley is his PA and personal henchman." And I will repeat, "Who are Judy and Jean, and what did you ask them to do?" "Oh, secretaries," said Ghislaine vaguely, adding, "I told them to organize the transport of some horses." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I said they were to be taken from Oxford to Basingstoke in horse boxes for a point-to-point, whatever that is, near Basingstoke. Then I asked these women to arrange for the horses to be brought back to Oxford afterwards." "Did these women say they were happy to carry out your orders?" I asked. "Oh yes, I told them my father had said it was all right." "Had he said it was all right?" I asked. "No," she replied. She blushed a little. "You're a very naughty girl. How old are you?" 9. I know I shouldn't have asked a 9-year-old child this question, but I was absolutely riveted. I tried to hide the obsessiveness in my voice. "What sort of hiding is your father going to give you exactly?" I asked, as casually as I could. Ghislaine looked nonplussed, as if she were thinking that she didn't deserve to be punished. She said, "Come into the house and I will show you. There's a whole row of things on the table. Daddy always allows me to choose what I want to be beaten with," she said. She took my hand and guided me to an empty room which had probably been an office at some time. I was fascinated by the sight of the various punitive instruments which had been arranged in a row on the table. Among the things I noticed were a riding crop, an ordinary stick, a cane which made a swishing noise on being used, and a shoehorn which was unable to inflict any pain at all. I admit that I behaved very irresponsibly. "Which one will you choose?" I asked, bending over backwards, not to sound unhealthy. or intimate. "The shoehorn," said Ghislaine assertively. "The shoehorn doesn't hurt." "Indeed," I said. "Does your father beat you with your trousers on or off?" "On," she said. I was temporarily lost for words. I felt a bit disappointed. I don't know why. "Call lover duck," says I, copying one of my father's expressions. "What does that mean?" Ghislaine asked. "Oh, nothing in particular." "I'll tell Daddy to use the shoehorn. That doesn't hurt," she repeated. "I know, you just told me that." There was a short silence. Ghislaine became rather cross for some reason. "Which one would you choose, Eleanor?" She always pronounced my name like that. "If my father wanted to beat you?" she asked in a very strange tone of voice. "Well, Ghislaine, I personally would choose the cane, the one which makes a swishing noise in the air. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to give you any funny ideas. Try to forget what I said just then. I wasn't thinking." There was another silence. The child looked puzzled. I completely lost my head. "I would ask your father if I could take my trousers off. Then I would ask him to beat me with the cane." "What, on your bare bottom?" she asked. "Why, yes," I said without thinking. I had caught a bit of sunstroke when I had been walking with Bob in the garden. My head ached and my wits were not about me. "Why would you ask my father to beat you on your bare bottom with the cane, particularly when the cane is the most painful of the lot? What you say doesn't make sense," she said. I feared that Ghislaine would repeat my words to her father. It seemed as if the little girl were giving me enough conversational rope to hang myself with. I was suddenly ashamed of my criminally fearless remarks, and my fear of her speaking to her father increased. "Tell me the truth, Eleanor," she said. "Would you really like to be beaten by my father on your bare bottom?" The words, "Oh Christ, yes," were struggling to be released from my lips. Somehow I managed to control myself. I said, "You've been appallingly naughty, Ghislaine. You gave instructions to your father's secretaries about the transport of various horses, making no allowances for the fact that they might possibly have had other things to do. You lied when you told these women that your father had given you permission to have them transported. It stands to reason that you should be punished, whether with a shoehorn or any other instrument." Ghislaine persisted like a dog gnawing at its favourite bone. "I really don't understand a word you say when you tell me that you would actually like to be whipped by my father with a cane and with your trousers down." "You keep repeating yourself," I say. "You may not understand this, but I am by no means perfect." I eventually managed to splutter. I added, "I did the most dreadful things when I was your age, and no one punished me. I still feel guilty, and I would like to be whipped by your father just to get rid of my guilt." I had really been sailing close to the wind. I knew I had been talking absolute bullshit. "Why does it have to be my father who whips you, and no one else?" persisted the exceptionally tiresome 9-year-old girl. "Because I know him personally. I wouldn't want a total stranger to do it. By the way, it's a very hot day today, isn't it, Ghislaine? We've been in this stuffy room for far too long. Let's go outside into the garden. There are a lot of other topics of conversation besides the subject we have been discussing at exhaustive length. I'm beginning to find it an awful bore. I said assertively. She walked with me to her pony, which was no longer on the tennis court. It was grazing on the very long grass outside. "Does your father ride?" I asked. "Not now, he doesn't, but just before he was given the MC, he rode fearlessly into battle on his jet black steed, flashing his sword in the shining sun." "You've got a great gift for words," I said. "Incidentally, while I was walking past your father's offices, I saw a few secretaries with puppies in their rooms. I can't tell you how relieved I was that we were no longer discussing corporal punishment." "Oh yes, my father has given puppies to some of his secretaries. Have you not seen Tiger and Whiskey, the Labradors?" "I know Tiger and Whiskey," I said. "One is male, the other is female. Are they the parents of all the puppies?" "Yes," she said. "We keep even more puppies in the house." "Whereabouts?" I asked. "They're in a basket in a room next door to the kitchen." "May I see them?" I asked. "Yes, we'll go to the kitchen so that I can see Mummy." Betty and the Filipino cook, Oping, were in the kitchen. Ghislaine ran off. I introduced myself to Oping, who was smiling. I had a long conversation with Betty, which I will come to shortly. Many years passed. Ghislaine had grown up and was living in New York. Bob had died a few years before. I was having lunch with Betty in her gloomy flat in London. I had consumed several gin and tonics, which made me sleepy. Betty said I could sleep on the sofa after lunch. After a few minutes, the phone rang. Ghislaine, now grown up, was on the line. Betty called her name. I could tell that Ghislaine was very upset and confused by the comforting way in which her mother was speaking to her. "Are you still seeing a psychiatrist about your relationship with Daddy and the way he was always whipping you?" asked Betty. I was only half asleep. An instinct caused me to sit bolt upright in manic excitement. Betty panicked. "Oh my God, Ghislaine, we can't continue this conversation. Eleanor's here. She was asleep. Now she's woken up." I remembered the conversation I had had with Ghislaine when she was a child. As I stated earlier, I had implied that there was something pleasurable rather than painful about being whipped by her father. The only thing I regretted was the fact that there wasn't a cat of nine tails on the table. I know I had perverted the child's mind, and that even as an adult she was pretty screwed up. She is reputed to be tough. She is not. She's just one hell of a screwed up dame, but she is still very beautiful. I suspect that she may be a sexual masochist. Betty had been really upset by the fact that I had heard most of her conversation. She reminded me of Fagin, in Oliver Twist, that is, like Fagin counting his tiaras.